Hi, everybody. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. I'm Matt Freese. I'm here with my co host, Nick Olson. We have no Gregg this week. He's out. It's Christmas week. People are busy finalizing plans for that sort of thing. So we're just going to have a chill time here. Probably not go too long on this one like we normally do for our other episodes, but we'll get you some content here, Vikings content, before Christmas. So if you're listening to it, really appreciate all of you.
There we go. Happy holidays, everyone. Merry early Christmas. Happy belated Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever else, Festivus, whatever else you're celebrating these days. We got to put the YouTube special Happy Holidays artwork to use. So
Yeah,
I'm going to
absolutely.
get
We had
you.
these lights made, and they're awesome. Thank you, Zion, once again. Does all the art for us, so really glad they're around here. So let's get right into it. Then let's go to our Week 14 game or Week 15 game rather, our 14th game of the season against the Bears. We ended up winning Monday Night Football. It was a national disaster. Everybody in America got to see it. It was the most watched Monday Night Football game on Week 15 in the last 10 years. I saw a little thing
Oh my
pop
gosh.
up on
I'm
Twitter.
sorry.
ESPN put that
I'm
out.
sorry, America.
Yeah, we're sorry, America, that you were subjected to a Vikings game. You'll get
We're
another
usually
one.
much more watchable. I promise.
You'll get another one in a week and a half, and it's against the Packers. So that always goes well for us.
It's so funny. It was like the Vikings' first wire-to-wire Like, I was never really like confident. I don't think I'm ever going to be confident again in a Vikings lead. But this lead, the Bears were just completely couldn't get anything going on. They had 3 points until the final, literally the final garbage time drive.
Yep.
So like, nothing good could going. Vikings were up 17-3 for I think most of the second half. So it was like clearly they were in kind of cruise control to a victory, and yet you would think like finally that there would be like this satisfaction of that finally happening. Like after so many one score games, last second heartbreaks, epic meltdowns in the second half or in the final 2 minutes. That didn't really happen this game, or to the extent the Vikings allowed it to happen, the Bears couldn't take advantage. And you would think like finally there would be something therapeutic about finally having a wire to wire win, where there was no like epic comeback at the end, and that's what happened, but like nothing about it was enjoyable. The Vikings found a way
No.
to make like a multiple score cruise control win like just pure terror and pain and torture for the fans. So that was new. Vikings always finding something new to surprise us from the fan experience.
Yeah,
So
so let's kick
um,
off on that torturous, painful experience that we found. And really, that came from the offense, right? In this game, the defense, at the end of the day, played pretty well. We allowed a few longer drives from the Bears, but, held them to 3 points until literally, we got the most backdoor one score game of all time, right? There at the end. But the offense just, you know, first drive stalled out a little bit. There were a couple missed connections really from Kirk deep on a couple of plays. The one to Amir Smith Marset sticks out. The one to Conklin, obviously, on the first drive. But the first half it was all right. A couple missed plays, like I just mentioned, but we scored 10 points. And then, we come out in the second half and we get the two penalties on that first drive of the second half on the Bears. The one I thought was pretty questionable for the defensive back going low when he's kind of trying to make the tackle. He does take
yeah.
out the offensive lineman, but I don't know. And then another 15-yarder, and we get the touchdown, and we're up by 14 points, and we do absolutely nothing after that. What, four straight 3-and-outs to end the game, basically?
It was painful. Kirk Cousins averaged 2.2 net yards per pass attempt. That's like incredibly like that would be very poor numbers for a very bad running back. So
To
for
be
that to be
clear,
your
that does include sacks. Net yards includes
yeah
the
net
sacks.
net
But
yards meaning not just attempts but also sacks. But I mean that was why I've seen a lot of folks be like, why would Zimmer talk about why they needed to run the ball more, considering like that it was all a backup secondary, and well, you look at the tape, they were actually covering things pretty well on the back end. Meanwhile, they had zero answer for Akeem Hicks. Like Mason Cole
oh
was
my
just
goodness.
the matchup. He's so outmatched in terms of length and in terms of power, that like there's just really nothing they couldn't. They seriously just couldn't. They had to throw out that entire section of the playbook of like deeper developing dropbacks and stuff, because unless he had help from Garrett Bradbury double teaming Akeem Hicks, there was like he could not win a one on one for 3 seconds against Hicks. So
Yeah.
I mean, Hicks is just so long and he's so quick, and he will get his hands into your pad so quickly that like Cole was getting wrecked all game. So like like actually yes, in for this instance, like the running game was more efficient than the passing game,
Yeah.
which was kind of interesting. I was actually pretty impressed by what the Bears did coaching wise, defensively undermanned, starting a bunch of guys that they had to start due to COVID replacements. So
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't bring that up initially, but like the Bears' entire secondary was replaced, and we really couldn't do anything down the field. I do think the pass blocking was a part of that, right? Robert Quinn, the one sack he had, the strip sack at Kirk, was just a freaky,
yeah.
freaky play by Quinn. Like that sort of bend, it's like that's like vintage Von Miller type of bend, and Quinn has had that throughout his career. Like he's been able to do that, but it's kind of interesting. He's had a bit of a resurgence this year. But like you
That was a
said,
really interesting. That was just to dive deep a little bit on Darisaw. Like that, I thought that was a really interesting matchup. We've
mhm,
seen Darisaw get beat by speed a couple times this year. I'm thinking specifically of that Brian Burns almost strip sack that Kirk Cousins
yeah,
managed to scramble out of against the Panthers late in the game. And we've seen sort of Darisaw. It's not that he's slow out of his stance, but like he's got athleticism to spare, and even against elite speed guys like Brian Burns, not necessarily Robert Quinn at 32 years old or whatever he is now, but Quinn can still obviously bend and dip around the edge. But Darisaw's he's got speed, but sometimes it's not like he's lethargic, but sometimes maybe it's either have a tick late off the snap or something, or he just kind of lumbers into his stance a little bit. Don't get beat around the edge. But I bring that up because I thought it was a really interesting matchup because Darisaw's pass wins against Quinn were also very like they both had highlight reels. It's kind of funny
yeah.
because Darisaw
I
ended up giving up 2 sacks, but he had some really good reps too as well,
mhm.
with Quinn like thrown into the ground too. So kind
No,
of fun
I
watching
think
that
that's a
one up
good point
close.
because for most of the game and before that, I had noted two plays when I was going through the tape where Darisaw really stood out to me on how he got Quinn upfield. Right, that when an opponent is speed rushing around the edge, all you need to do is push him back past the pocket, get him past the quarterback. And like Darisaw did that and more on those plays against Quinn. And this was just like a freaky, freaky edge bend play. Like the ankle flexion is what people talk about if they get really technical in that. And his ability to do that, to get low and get underneath and get his hand around and get the hand on the ball, was just crazy on that play.
That's interesting. Darisaw being our first round pick, like obviously a big. You hope him to be a good big building block of this team going forward. And I think I've seen enough where there's a lot I think he still needs to work on technically. Like not, I can list probably 10 things that like stand out to me of things he needs to work on. So clearly, I understand why he didn't start right away. But I've also seen like traits and things. The things that I have seen that are positive from him, I think are really positive. And the things that I think he needs to work on are things that are mostly fixable. I'm not sure he's
Yep.
going to be like a surefire All Pro anytime soon, but it's just interesting. Like it was just a funny game where you give up 2 sacks, but I kind of also think he had a pretty good game nonetheless. So a fun matchup, a tough
Yeah.
matchup, but a fun one.
Yeah, and I think the major question mark with him, right, from his college tape especially, was like there was like times where like he didn't seem invested or like involved at all in that tape. And I think that's been answered this year. Like I think he cares and it matters.
Oh, totally.
So
Yeah, and
that's a
zero
big thing.
questions about his
Yeah.
motor or his finishing this year. I mean, he's if anything, like he has more highlights of finishing than anyone else on the team
Yeah.
right now. So,
Absolutely. So
good
yeah,
stuff.
Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks really wreaked havoc on the offensive line. 90 on the Bears, I noticed, made a couple of good plays
Yeah.
as well. I want to shout him out. I forget his name though, so that's pretty bad of me.
Bears just plugging these guys out constantly.
Yeah. So yeah, the Bears just have so many of these guys where it's just kind of crazy how good they are. I thought also in the linebacker level, Roquan Smith and Alec Ogletree played fast to the ball. Like they were a big part of the reason the run game lost its success in the second half. Like they were playing fast to the ball, attacking downhill. That should have left them susceptible to the passing game. But we didn't really run play action or we didn't run bootlegs as much. I thought we got them a few times on bootlegs, and I thought that was something we should have gone back to the well to more on offense, but we didn't end up doing that. Uh, but yeah, if we flip over to the defensive side of the ball, right, we had, really, I think a standout performance by the defense. You had only 3 points up until literally the final play of the game where they had 1 second left and the game is over, right? So I don't really care too much about that points. You had a number of fourth down stops. I looked it up. The Bears were 2 of 12 on third down, and I don't think they converted a fourth down attempt either. So functionally, in downs where they need to extend to the next down in distance, they had absolutely nothing. Like, Zimmer did a great job here limiting Justin Fields.
Yeah, if you look at kind of like the aggregate like yards per play numbers from the Bears, they weren't bad. Like this wasn't a 3-point performance. Justin Fields averaged 7.3 yards per attempt, which isn't terrible. It's pretty average actually, and they averaged 4.1 yards on the ground, which includes some Justin Fields scrambles and stuff. But like that's a pretty good average overall, and they did get some explosives in the run game as well. So when you look at like from the top down view, it seems like this probably should have been a game where they put up 20 plus points or something. But this is just, what is Mike Zimmer good at? He's good at third downs and he's good at red zone defense, situational football. I haven't necessarily seen that from the red zone defense this year, but I think this was a game where like everything that Mike Zimmer is good at, that like those key situations where scheme plays such a bigger role because you can kind of take away certain things, you can see what's going to happen, and you can design good blitz packages, or there's less field to cover, so you can tinker with your coverages on the back end a little bit more in the red zone. Like Zimmer, I think, had a really, really well called game. Obviously, you mentioned them being 2 of 12 on third downs, which is a really good stop rate, but it's also like they got into enemy territory, I think 7 or 8 drives, and they came away with 3 points on all of them. They were in the red zone 5 times, and they had 1 field goal, and then they had the final touchdown in like garbage time. So to go, they had until like the last final like touchdown drive in garbage time, they had more red zone trips than they had red zone points, which is insane. When you get into the red zone, the expectation should be 3 points is the bare minimum here, and instead we stopped them not only on the third downs, but we stopped them on fourth downs multiple times in the red zone. Kind of made it for a painful fan experience because at every moment you were waiting for them to just finally bust one through and start running up the score, scoring touchdowns, making it a one-score game, and they couldn't really do it because Zimmer was just so good. And some of it was like self-imposed. Justin Fields made some really bad rookie mistakes, like taking a sack on a screen, taking these other 15-yard sacks.
Well, and the fumble
guys
is
dropping
just
passes.
pretty inexcusable too.
Like a lot of bad fumbles. I mean, Justin Fields leads the league in fumbles right now, so we saw that. But it wasn't just him; it was David Montgomery, and then I think it was Jameer Byrd who dropped the punt or whatever. So, got some lucky breaks on the turnovers as well. But like, anytime you hold a team to 3 points until garbage time, like clearly you're doing something right on defense. And I think with this game with Zimmer, it was specifically those crucial third down red zone performances. So that was awesome to see.
Yeah, those third down performances were big, and it's really a change from what we'd seen previously in the year, right? Previously, when we had to stop teams, we've been unable to do it. Particularly on fourth downs, I feel like we've really struggled on a number of games in critical situations. Here, we stopped them like every single time, and I've heard people say, or I saw it mentioned that like if the Bears had kicked field goals every opportunity that they had, which first of all they attempted 1 field goal that they missed in the game right before the half, right? But second of all, in those situations where they ended up going for it, like you're not expecting they needed to score the 2 touchdowns at that point. Like it logically made sense for them to go for it on fourth down, even outside of an analytics perspective, which I'm sure pretty much tells you to go for it on fourth down there. Like it just logically made sense based on the game situation to do it. So I don't think that the aggressiveness or the fourth down decision making was really a problem by the Bears. We just executed well.
Yeah, and I think particularly a few guys stood out to me. I think all the defensive tackles had really good
Michael
games.
Pierce had a phenomenal game. He was fantastic.
Yeah, this was really the game that made you realize the vision of why they paid this big money to Michael Pierce, because he had an incredible game. And the things that he allows the scheme to do and the things he unlocks because he can really two-gap or he can really take on double teams in a way that even like Dalvin Tomlinson's a really good player. He's been like a top 20 graded defensive tackle every year in the NFL. And he is one this year again. So, you don't think of him necessarily. He's kind of a glue guy. He doesn't pop up the stat sheet, but he's doing his job really well. Michael Pierce is just a whole nother level. Like the way he'll take on multiple blockers and drive them back, like taking on two shoulders at once.
He did that at least once or twice in this game. Like that was
crazy, insane. And like, he's really come on as a pass rusher too. I think I saw the stat that like in past few games he's like the 3rd highest graded defensive tackle in terms of pass rush grade, which is insane because he's not an Aaron Donald quickness gap shooter type, but he will. Kind of like when Prime Linval was just so big and strong that if you
Yeah.
left him one on one with somebody, he will eat you alive.
It
Michael Pierce is
is
the same
funny
way.
though
He's
because Michael
so
Pierce is a lot
strong.
smaller, like dimensionally, than Linval is. Well, he's wider probably, but like he's got short arms and he's not very
Yeah,
tall.
Linval was so tall,
Yeah,
whereas Michael Pierce will really get use that leverage against you, and on top of the fact that he can like squat 800 pounds with some insane Olympic lifter number. So,
yeah,
yeah, it was awesome to see what he did. Really, him and I think Anthony Barr. We haven't really seen them play together very much, but the things they unlock as far as like what Zimmer does for the defense, we saw a lot of like Barr's sim pressures in this game.
hmm
I think they have to be very careful when they're blitzing Justin Fields because he's like lightning quick if he decides to scramble on you, and we got burned by that a couple times. But like Barr's able to really threaten and force protections, but then drop out and take something away in the flat or take away a mesh or crosser over the middle. So I think those two guys, it's great to finally see them healthy because they unlock so many things for the scheme that you can't do with a Troy Dye or with a James Lynch or with some the next man up. You just have to take out certain sections of the playbook. So awesome to see them together. It was a really big thing behind the defensive performance that led to 3 points until garbage time.
yeah. And I also want to shout out the corners in the secondary too. There, like this, I think they played pretty well. I don't like Fields' passing numbers at the end of the day looked pretty good, but a lot of that was that garbage time. A couple of those garbage time drives, and it's like the Vikings are kind of playing more prevent defense. They're allowing like 10-yard curls or something over the middle where they get tackled in bounds. And that's not something I really care too much about, right, on the defense. For the majority of the game, they weren't able to complete anything downfield. And now, granted, the Bears receiver core, like they're putting Demir Bird out there, and he was like a featured part of their passing game. So that's maybe not the highest level of competition, right? We're gonna go up against a Rams team that has OBJ and Cooper Kupp here next week. Um, but Cameron
little
Chancellor,
little step up.
I can't remember him allowing much at all in the passing game. Honestly, like the one big play to Darnell Mooney was a play action rollout that they had. It probably got 30 or 40 yards, but literally Mackenzie Alexander's hand was 6 inches from getting that ball and knocking it down. And Justin Fields just threw the ball into a really tight window and made it. Mooney had a lot of space after that, but I thought that the defense on that play in particular was all right. Right, so
Yeah.
I think they really did pretty well on overall on the defensive side of the ball. Michael Pierce, I just want to go back to like against the center he was playing against. Every single run play, it seemed like he was knocking 2 yards back into the backfield, which is extremely rare for defensive tackles to be able to do. Like that was really great to see.
Yeah, Pierce is just a complete game wrecker. When he's healthy, and you can tell he's finally healthy now.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he returned from IR, he wasn't 100%. You can tell he's pretty close to 100% now, and it's just a huge difference maker. Not just in the pass game, not just in the run game, but what he can do as a pass rusher as well. Like if you don't double, if you teams have to make a choice between doubling him and doubling Dalvin Tomlinson, and it's a tough one because they're both really good as rushers.
Yeah,
And Armin Watts, he. I talk about how impressed I was by the defensive tackles. Armin Watts is so good as a pass rusher. Like he's not like athletically super gifted, which is why it's so
sure.
surprising to me. Like he's got some quickness and he's got like pretty good like he can sort of twist and bend around and he'll beat he can twist through a gap or he's got like functional athleticism, so he's not like a nobody, but at the same time he's not like an Aaron Donald or even like a Tom Johnson, but he's just so smart with his hands. He'll like I'm shocked at how frequently he'll catch an offensive lineman's hands before they get their hands on him, and it's just really impressive to me the way he's able to like swat or chop or rip and beat guys away. And essentially, he'll keep his chest so clean that like guys will put their hands up on him, and he'll like find a way to like neutralize them, like a like a
Yeah,
kung fu martial artist.
yeah,
Like he's
yeah.
just he keeps his way he keeps his chest plate clean and makes him I think probably our best pass rusher in our third down packages. So both because of how injured we are on the edges, but also how good he is. It's a testament to how good he is as a pass rusher. So
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome to see.
one pass rusher we didn't bring up yet who had 3 sacks on the game is DJ Wanham. And obviously like his sacks were not winning as an edge rusher sacks, right? They were the first one. He was unblocked on a screen. He had, and it's an incredibly athletic play. It shows his length. Like he gets in Justin Fields' face and gets his hands up to where Justin Fields cannot release the throw. Like if Fields releases the throw, there's a decent chance that it's picked because Wanham was so quick to get to it, and then he basically lands and is able to bear hug him and sack him right there. The second one was on a rollout, a naked bootleg where Fields tries to escape Wanham essentially, who was unblocked off of the edge. He tries to escape. He runs backwards. He loses a bunch of yardage. The final one was, I believe, he had one where he almost got the late hit, but it was very clearly inbounds, right? Which was just an incompletion. But then he also had, and again, he was unblocked on that play. Or he came, actually on that play, he came all the way across the formation to kind of chase him down from the back end. So that was nice to see. And then the last one was another effort one, where it was fourth down and Fields was trying to make something happen, and it's a bootleg and he doesn't have the throw, and he ends up getting sacked by Wanham. So unfortunately, no real pass rush wins, right? Which is what we'd like to see from him as a player. But the effort and that is nice to see as well.
It's very funny. If you only watched like the one-on-one cut-ups of Wanham engaging Tevin Jenkins, you would think like Jenkins is an all-pro and Wanham is a scrub.
Yeah.
But if you watch like the whole game in context, Wanham got 3 sacks and Jenkins had like 3 penalties and is clearly still a work in progress. I guess you can have a good debate on whether that unnecessary roughness was like something you like to see from your offensive lineman or not. Obviously, it hurts you a lot, but if your quarterback is getting hit, you want your lineman to be protective of him. So, but at the same time, like Jenkins, you got to clean up the false starts. Meanwhile, Wanham, like when he's actually engaging the left tackle, he didn't have many wins, but like those effort plays count for a lot too, and just the motor and the ability to like be one of the better athletes and continue to play through the whistle every game, like. It's sort of funny to have a 3-sack game, 9 pressures, 2 tackles for loss on top of it or whatever. That like wasn't necessarily super impressive.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, obviously it's super valuable, and especially against as the NFL goes more and more to more mobile quarterbacks, having somebody like DJ Wanham in there who can handle sort of the edge defenders in today's game can get stressed so much more with like the additions of more teams running zone read or read option, more teams doing those stretch plays, the jet motion. So having somebody on the field who can has this sort of sideline to sideline capacity to handle that stuff is huge, and it obviously paid huge dividends in this game too. So good stuff to see from Wanham. Hopefully he can continue to develop as a pass rusher because he's still work in progress there.
Yeah, and that motor is something you see from Daniil Hunter all the time too, right? Like that's one of the hallmarks of Daniil Hunter's game is how many times have we seen him 10, 15, 20 yards downfield chasing a play from the backside if the opponent hits the back play, it hits a play and he makes the tackle, right? So it's good to see that from Wanham making those plays, where it requires effort. The last thing I wanted to hit on before we'll roll into tape talk is just a little bit about the officiating, because it was rough in this game, right? Like,
awful.
Like, I mean,
awful on both sides.
Bears, on both sides. Like, there were a couple on the Bears that that Tevin Jenkins one, like that's a penalty. The James Lynch one where Justin Fields takes a knee, but he barely takes a knee, and they don't blow a whistle, and then they throw a 15-yard flag because he was supposed to see that he took a knee and the play's dead. I don't understand that one at all. It wasn't body weight. He had half of his body off. Like the Akeem Hicks sack of Kirk where we think he injured his ribs, that was more body weight than the other one was. I don't love the body weight penalty anyway. So like
it's a dumb rule, but by the letter of the law, that hit was definitely a penalty. Like he full body weight into. I guess he kind of caught himself.
He did catch himself with his arms a little bit. So
so long, but like he does like a push up on his Kirk Cousins body.
Yeah, I give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. The Kendricks ejection was absolutely ridiculous. Like it's a penalty. 100% it's a 15-yard penalty because you can't make contact with the helmet of the quarterback if he's sliding. And he did that. He was clearly trying to avoid the hit. And I cannot stand the ejection for that. That was ridiculous.
It's tough.
I
thought it looked bad live, and so I don't necessarily blame a ref for. I mean, it's clearly a penalty, and it's especially tough because the way Fields slide, it's like a baseball slide where he keeps his head up instead of most guys to kind of tuck their body under them a little bit, whereas like Fields kind of like leaves his head exposed to get chopped by somebody screaming across the play. So that's a little tough, but I would think that's the sort of thing where it's like that's the first of two. Like next time you're out, but to just go straight to ejection, I feel like that's reserved for very, very bad behavior. And I don't think what Kendricks did is like deserving of a suspension or a fine or anything. It was just kind of a bang bang play. Yep. So
I agree with that. There was one third down where they missed a pass interference penalty on Jefferson. The corner was there way early. They missed that, but they called it pretty. They called it pretty loose in the game. Like there weren't a whole lot of pass interferences, so I'm kind of fine with that.
Well, the Kirk Cousins interception was clearly like
Oh
the
yeah, that
defender
that
just
was
like
bad. Yeah,
held on for dear life. And I don't know how they missed that because it was so blatantly a penalty.
I think
And
what they might have said is that they got their feet tangled, but like the feet
no,
tangled, the feet getting tangled, if it happened, was because the dude was grabbing onto Justin Jefferson and clipped his heel after he'd been
tugging jersey.
stacked.
So
Like it was
yeah,
ridiculous. And that play. So I do want to say I don't agree with Kirk throwing the ball the way he threw the ball on that play because there's the possibility you don't get the penalty. Like you can throw that ball without throwing a lob shot directly to a defender that he's going to catch, in my opinion.
yeah.
So I didn't love that from Kirk. But
That's such a funny play because happening live, it's like that's the worst interception I've ever seen, and he throws it so early, like and Justin Jefferson falls so early that you're sort of wondering, like, does he have time to look at his receiver? I assume he just sort of read the safety, saw middle of the field was closed, and that like Jefferson was gonna,
yeah,
go to like the deep third on the opposite end, and it was maybe he would. I guess it was kind of such a rainbow pass that maybe it would have been like more of a contested catch or something, but yeah, that's a hard one to even like diagram because you're like everybody fell over and it goes straight to the safety. So I don't even know how you make
well,
heads
yeah.
or tails of what
When he
was
let the
supposed to
ball
happen.
go, I just assumed it was going to land in green grass and there was going to be like nobody there because it looked like an obvious like give up throwaway, which it kind of was, but it went directly to a defender. Like you don't do that.
Oh man,
But
oh man.
let's jump into the tape talk a little bit. I think the biggest thing for me, tape talk. We should do a drum roll or something. I don't know.
Working
But
on our sound bites here.
yeah, where's the soundbite transition? We should really jump into the offensive struggles, right? Because I think that's what's most concerning moving forward. The Bears were playing without anybody in their secondary. They had signed guys off the street, and we weren't able to do anything at all in the second half after that 2 penalty aided drive that we had. So I think the big thing is, the conservatism of the offensive play calling. Like we ran the ball on first and second down a ton. We even ran the ball on like third and like medium kind of, which is a kind of an interesting decision. And then once we are getting in passing situations, obviously the offensive line didn't hold up. We talked about Akeem Hicks. We talked about Robert Quinn. But on the downfield end is where I think it gets interesting. The Vikings were taking a number of shot plays, and we were talking a little bit about this before the show, but the Bears corners, the Bears secondary, all off the street, I thought actually held up really well.
Thomas Graham, who is that guy?
Yeah, Thomas Graham played great.
Holy smokes! Holy smokes!
Like he deserves to be on an NFL roster, and he deserves to have a contract after the way he played in this game. He was playing with the
Vikings could certainly use him.
Yeah, right. I will say, the third down thing specifically, there were a couple of shot plays, right? So the Conklin play early in the game, actually the Conklin play later where he did not get his head taken off by the defensive back. Like that was not a penalty at all, and they threw a penalty flag, so we got bailed out there. And then the Amir Smith-Marset play were shot plays that I appreciate Kirk still taking. We hit a bunch of those to the sideline at the beginning of the year. We hit one to Conklin at the beginning of the year. We hit one to Jefferson. We probably hit one to Thielen. We hit one to C.J. Ham at one point this year, right? So I'm cool with those third down shot plays. It gets us explosive plays. It shows aggression. The slot fade to Smith-Marset, I think they were showing blitz on that play, and Kirk probably initially wanted to come to Jefferson, but a guy dropped into the hole off of the middle, and Jefferson was running around over the middle, so he would have robbed that. The whole player would have gotten that. So he has to throw to Smith-Marset. It's a great defensive play by Graham. I think the throw is in the correct location. I wouldn't have wanted to lead him there. I think having your receiver turn around for the ball is the correct decision there. Outside of that, though, like the pressure getting to Kirk quickly was a big thing. And then, the Bears not letting Justin Jefferson do anything without like 2 guys on him. The Amir Smith-Marset touchdown, Jefferson had 3 guys on him. Smith-Marset had 0, right? And other guys, KJ found a nice space underneath sometimes. But ultimately, other guys weren't, are not KJ Osborne, our Tyler Conklins weren't winning the game. They weren't winning the plays, so they weren't getting open, and credit to the Bears for doing a good job in the secondary on that, I think.
Yeah, it's funny watching it live. It kind of seemed like the Vikings offense was playing terribly, and then when it went back and rewatched it, it seemed like defensively they were executing very well, and they were also scheming things up really well in such a way that There was a lot of cover two, or at least two high looks, where they were kind of taking away everything, or maybe
Hmm.
even more like cover four, where it's like kind of too high, but they're not necessarily like taking everybody out of the fit or whatever, or necessarily selling out against the deep type stuff. So just and selling out against Justin Jefferson. Basically, we're not going to let you throw deep on us. We're not going to let Justin Jefferson beat us. We will let KJ Osborne beat us to the flat or whatever. But then they also did a great job rallying to the flats whenever, like,
Yep.
if it was a boot and it would dump off to CJ Ham, he would get tackled by the first guy after 3 yards instead of like you hope when Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne are running, say, a three-level flood to that side, that if they carry the guys vertically, that gives some green grass for Ham to run through. But instead, they were reading it really well. If guys were like splitting defenders, where they're sort of like having to in between two guys at once, they did a great job reading Cousins and rallying to the ball. So the Bears defense, I thought, just played really well. At the same time, like you said, I mean, part of it is, and we've mentioned this before, was it's just such a short and shot offense where they get explosives, but the offense is either so much quick game or running stuff, and passing game is either explosives or like screens that get blown up, or sometimes the screens break free and you get big plays out of them, but it's either like shot plays or it's checkdowns or it's the quick curls or it's the slant flats. Like that's kind of they struggle at times to figure out ways to move the ball, more than 5 yards past the sticks or whatever. So
And there was a period
Bears
of
did a great.
time where we were hitting those intermediate shots, like with the digs and stuff, and we hit one or two in this game, and we tried to go back to the well a couple times,
Yeah,
and it didn't work. The one third down, so the first third down that Jefferson converted on the touchdown drive was very similar to the later third down, and this was like in the fourth quarter where I thought it was pretty critical, where they had KJ Osborne running like diagonal on a clear out route. So it's kind of like dagger, but he's running diagonal to try to occupy the other safety, and Jefferson runs a dig in behind him. With outside leverage for the corner, he had the advantage. He was wide open the first time. The second time, the corner played it well, had tight coverage, and got there early. I thought it should have been pass interference. But that second time, there was a key difference to me because in the first time, the Bears are in a too high shell, right? And the safety on the opposite side of the field comes down and robs KJ Osborne's crosser. The second time, it's single high and it's just man coverage. KJ Osborne's wide open in the crosser. I didn't really understand why Kirk didn't throw that. But like the bootleg game was working in this game too. That's another thing where on the first play of the game, we should have had a 20-yard game. Kirk ran for like 8 yards or something, but Jefferson was wide open, and I don't know why Kirk
yeah.
didn't throw it on that play. Like that was bizarre to me how he doesn't let go of that ball because that's a 20-30 yard gain to Justin Jefferson. Uh,
There were a couple plays. I think for the most part, the Bears had very tight coverage, but there were
yeah,
a couple plays where I'm like, Kirk, I wish you had seen this. Like, did you see the Tyler Conklin leak that like he was wide open on? Probably could have had a
I
touchdown.
might I think I missed that. No, so yeah, but
Was that one?
there
I
was
mean, the
one.
first play of the game, Jefferson was wide open,
Yeah,
so there's a couple ones. But for the most part, um, I think Cousins was taking sometimes you get frustrated with all the short depth of target, but I think for the most part, they were taking, it was just the Bears scheming this stuff away. So,
yeah,
and the tough part is when you play so much too high, that should mean you're outgapped in the run game, and the run game should get going. And there was a lot of things that kind of just came together where the run game wasn't executing. Akeem
yep.
Hicks was playing very well, kind of like crashing down on gaps, like where he's one gapping, but he'll like shove Mason Cole into a second gap or whatever, so that
Mm-hmm.
like Dalvin can't run through either gap because now Hicks is occupying both of them. So yeah, it was tough. I don't think the run blockers, other than maybe Darrisaw, I don't think anybody really blocked very well. Dalvin probably there were some tight holes that sometimes he would slip through or squeeze through, and
Yep.
this time he kind of got tripped up and wasn't able to like get explosives out of them. There were a lot of like close calls or whatever in the run game
Yeah.
where like you see the gap and you're
Yep.
like, oh man, if he could have just
If
stayed
he could have
upright,
just
this would have
kind
been a
of
big game.
woven through here, maybe a little bit tighter or something like that. Yeah. There definitely were those
I mean,
gaps, and he had a couple 10-yard runs too. Like, so it wasn't
yeah.
terrible, but I agree.
Yeah, so that I mean, it's tough, and it was a good game plan from the Bears. Credit to their coaches because they were able to take away Jefferson, and they were also able to like the confluence of fronts. We're seeing more of these bear fronts, and we're
Yep.
seeing more of these like guys selling out against the wide zone stuff that we have to. from our our A game plan to our B game plan, and now we're running more duo and stuff where we're just not as good at generating holes for Dalvin to run through that. Against a really stout defensive line like the Bears, like it's just tough to create space for Dalvin to run through. So overall, offensively, just like a very bad, miserable game from efficiency perspective. But at the same time, this part of that is just you got to tip your hat to what the Bears were able to do, both in terms of coaching and in terms of their players executing.
Yeah, so I think we hit that pretty well. We hit the defense pretty good earlier too, as well. I think we went pretty in detail there. Anything else you want to hit before we jump to the Rams game?
I mean, we could go into more detail about like what Zimmer was doing on third downs and the fronts and the coverages on the back end, but I feel like we already talked about it enough. In theory, this was supposed to be a short one because people have got their Christmas carols to get to and their eggnog and everything else. There's still presents to open.
I mean, not that what Zimmer does every week isn't amazing, but he does it every week, and we've kind of talked about it before, so I agree with you there. So let's jump into the Rams real quick. Rams, bunch of issues with COVID, right? Their game was postponed until Tuesday. We're recording Thursday evening, so that was 2 days ago. And now they're back. They pretty much have everybody back off of that COVID list. I think Jordan Fuller and Tyler Higbee are the only... I just checked it before this. They are the only two major players that I recognize on that list. They've got 6 total, 3 on their active roster, 3 from the practice squad on the list. So they're back to full strength. They've been playing... They've had ups and downs this season, right? There was a stretch of primetime games where they looked awful for like 3 straight weeks. But, at the end of the day, they're the leading wild card, or they might be leading the NFC West right now. They're tied with the Cardinals. So they're one of the better teams in the NFL. Stafford has had, statistically an absolutely phenomenal season. If you look at the stats, like ANYA and EPA per play, I think he's the best quarterback by pretty much everything. Sean McVay, obviously a fantastic offensive designer. And Cooper Kupp, if you're looking at Jonathan Taylor for the league MVP, you might as well look at Cooper Kupp too. Has over 1,600 yards in 14 games so far, 12 touchdowns, something like that. So he's been having an absolutely phenomenal year.
They also have Odell Beckham.
Yeah, and they also have Odell Beckham, who turns out not bad, just not a fit with Baker, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. They're kind of in the same way that the Vikings are kind of a studs and duds type of like top heavy roster. I think the Rams have built themselves the same way in terms of they've got Aaron Donald, they've got Jalen Ramsey. They traded for Von Miller now too, who I think would also go in that sort of that stud category. And then they've kind of got a lot of other guys who are not bad, but kind of just like glue guys. It's very, but at the same time, it's very tough to know. How do you game plan for Aaron Donald? Like a double team is not going to be enough to beat him because he knows how to all the tricks that to slow down Aaron Donald. He's ready for your trap runs. He's ready for your double teams. He'll know how to split them. So there's not a lot you can do. So they got their hands cut out for them. This is a game where you really hope Adam Thielen is back healthy because. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey will necessarily shadow Jefferson. Ramsey obviously is capable of shadowing pretty much anybody in the game. He's kind of a build in a lab cornerback in terms of just he's very tall and long, but he doesn't have to sacrifice any hip fluidity.
He's got
to be that
true rare athleticism, like truly rare athleticism.
Really able to use both his physicality, but also just have like the flexibility to read and like the intelligence to read plays. And know where the ball is going. So just kind of a very, in my opinion, probably the best cornerback in the game right now. So they've got a lot of things they can throw at you defensively and build their defense around. And then on offense, we've seen McVay shred Zimmer before. We've also seen the exact opposite happen when Zimmer kind of like got revenge on McVay before. So it's interesting. McVay is he's such a smart head coach, and his scheme is so. I think everything fits so well together in a way that there's a reason for the way he does everything, from the tight splits of his receivers to the motion, to the constant jet motion, to the way he does so much like wide zone, but the things he builds off of the wide zone in terms of like the guys going both ways, whether it's wind back like counter or whether it's like jet motion, or like split motion. So he'll just throw so many things at you, and he designs them very well. But also he's kind of guy who, if he has a weakness, it's that I don't think he gets figured out, but like if somebody has an answer or somebody like knows what's going to come next or what he's trying to build off of, like, and they have an answer for that, he kind of like he's not going to like be like, okay, let's scrap our wide zone team. We're
Yeah,
gonna like
he
go to
doesn't.
duo or whatever.
He
He's just kind of
doesn't
this is the thing. So there's no plan
adapt
B with him.
quickly, I think, is
Yeah.
what you were saying there. Like, he doesn't, like, I mean, the Patriots Super Bowl is the obvious example of it, right? Like, they came out with the 6-1 defensive front, and they ran that all game, and they beat the crap out of the Rams up front, and the Rams didn't have an answer for it. And you saw that run the next couple years, and the Rams didn't have an answer for it. Now, maybe part of that is Jared Goff's limitations, right, with the team, but I think we've seen up and down play from Matthew Stafford as well. Like, I don't think Matt Stafford's stats this year have really outpaced anything Goff was doing with that team. And then you see the mistakes, like he's willing to take shots downfield, but that leads to mistakes because he's not always a consistently accurate player going down the field. I do agree. Like, first and foremost, Aaron Donald is the biggest question in this game to me, right? Because the Vikings didn't stop Kenny Clark when we played the Packers, weeks ago. They didn't, like, they can't stop dominant interior defensive linemen. They haven't been able to do it for like 3 years, right? So
Yeah.
Aaron Donald is a big concern for me. With what our interior offensive line looks like. It sounds like Oli Udo's now going to start at right guard instead of Mason Cole. So we won't have the length problem that Mason Cole has, but Aaron Donald doesn't create length problems for you like Akeem Hicks does, right? Yeah. Like, so he creates quickness problems, which honestly I might rather have Mason Cole in there.
Yeah.
Just based on their athletic profiles versus them, right? But so it'll be interesting to see. I do have one final question on the Rams for you, Nick, though. Is Matthew Stafford any good? Noted Matthew Stafford hater Nick Olson. Is Matthew Stafford any good?
This is tough because I'm in too deep with my bit that like Matthew Stafford secretly sucks and it's all just like the Emperor not wearing clothes. But if I have to put on my serious analyst hat, like, yes, he's a very good flawed quarterback in the same way that like Kirk Cousins is a very good flawed quarterback. He's always going to make boneheaded mistakes. He's always going to have brain farts on the field where he doesn't see guys or he misdiagnoses coverages or he thinks he can get away with things that he doesn't. He's obviously he's got the arm strength to fit balls in that like almost nobody else can do. He's probably top 5 arm talent or arm strength at least, maybe not arm talent because I would say he's like an average, maybe even below average in terms of accuracy. He's really underrated by how good he is in the pocket. He's not like an athletic guy, but he moves really well and I think he senses pressure really well in the pocket. And because he's so good with his arm strength, he can obviously switch up his arm slots in a lot of different ways to like get the ball out. So he's a good quarterback. If I were the Rams, I mean, it's tough what they gave up for him because I'm just not sure when you're paying him as much as he is. I'm not sure Stafford gets you to any different of a place than like Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield, where like, yeah, he's good, you can win with him. The question is like, if you're paying him $40 million a year, can you win a Super Bowl with him, or is that more of an albatross around your contract, or is his contract an albatross that keeps you from building a Super Bowl winning team? And it's actually an interesting question with what the Rams are doing because they've got such a talented roster, and obviously compared to Jared Goff, he's been an upgrade compared to what Goff has been at least in the previous years. And there are things Stafford can do with those deep shots to, whether it's Van Jefferson last week or whether it's whoever, like running down the field or hitting those like leaks or those backside. McVay does a great job. Like sort of like switching things up and sort of the deep routes he runs, and Stafford is able to hit those windows in ways that like Kirk Cousins probably couldn't. So you get the appeal, absolutely, but at the same time, like, man, just some of the fundamental things that like I value in a quarterback, like accuracy and not making mistakes, not turning the ball over. He gets average to below average marks in those. So for me personally, I don't think he's I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he's a Pro Bowl quarterback, but you could certainly do a lot worse than him too. So that's my extended spiel on Stafford.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I generally agree with you, and I think the thing that's holding him back from being elite, like you said, is the consistency. I think there are low points in his game, and one of the things I'm interested to see is Mike Zimmer has always had a bead on Matthew Stafford, like in terms of we've been able to beat him up every time we play him, it seems like. And I wonder if that's part of, the Lions-ness of what he was with, or that's something that generally, he's going to struggle with because, the quarterback has input in protection calls, right? And Zimmer's blitzes have confounded the Lions for a long time, and they confounded them with Stafford. I think, if that continues against the Rams, we might get a couple sacks against him. And this team leads the league in sacks somehow. By the way, we don't have any edge rushers, and we lead the league in sacks.
It's insane. It's
that
insane.
among above anything else is a testament to Mike Zimmer and his blitz schemes.
However much you might hate Mike Zimmer, you have to give him credit that we lead the NFL in sacks, and our best pass rusher is DJ Wanham.
Right, our best edge rusher is DJ Wanham, and
or Armand Watts. I don't know. You could have an argument.
But no, so it'll be an interesting matchup. Obviously, I'm not necessarily expecting the Vikings to win right now. The Rams are a lot better team. The Vikings just haven't put that consistency together. But it'll be another one-score game because that's all we play. So
the Rams, I think, are a significantly more talented team. Like if you just look at the blue chips, like Ramsey, yes. Donald, even like the Andrew Whitworth going down, 40-year-old left tackle playing like an all-pro. They just have a lot more talent, I think, top to bottom, and a lot fewer weak points in the roster. I mean, they do have some, but I think, the Vikings struggles with like having no cornerbacks or having no interior offensive linemen worries me a lot more than like the weak points in the Rams roster. That said, two things give me hope. One is the fact that, like I said, like McVay is so good with his plan A, but also Zimmer is really good at figuring out what your plan A is and taking it away. That's what I think. What we saw the last time, like that Zimmer, like sort of, or when Zimmer like got revenge against McVay, I think that's really what happened. Is Zimmer is so good at figuring out, here's what you want to do, and here's how I'm going to take it away. Yep. So Zimmer kind of has a way. I like that. As good as McVay is, I think Zimmer is a good scheme matchup, despite the fact that like McVay like toasted him the first time they matched
2018
up
in 2018 or whatever that was. Yeah.
The other thing is that it's a home game, and I feel like I can totally see a difference in terms of what this defense and the scheme can do and what the offense, the kinds of rhythms they can get into. I think the crowd noise actually does have a big effect on the team. So that's, I think, clearly it affects betting lines. Betting lines say this is a toss-up, Rams favored by 3.5 or whatever, so obviously better team on a neutral field, but this being U.S. Bank, big home team advantage, I think, this is definitely anybody's game, even though I still have questions about how the heck we're going to slow down Cooper Kupp
or Aaron Donald or anyone. Offense, really.
Exactly.
All of them.
Exactly.
Great conversation there. I think you're right. I think the crowd noise does matter. Like, it clearly mattered against the Steelers. Like, it very obviously mattered in that game. So we hope that the crowd shows up once again and does great work there.
Not to retcon our Bears conversation, but they were doing so much hurry up. Like they would like quick huddle, snap, and then just go. And I feel like a big reason the Bears do that is because like they know that if they let Zimmer use the play clock to his advantage, like they're gonna let Harrison Smith do all his disguising, and Anthony Barr is gonna like show blitz and then drop out, and so they're just like going because they don't want to use. They don't want Mike Zimmer to use the defensive play clock to his advantage, which he's probably one of the best in the NFL at scheming around the play clock. So that makes a huge difference at home because you can't do hurry up as easily when it's deafeningly loud, and you can't just call out and then just go. So
not everybody gets on the same page there. It's hard to even hear in the huddle and get everybody aligned right. So I think that's a really interesting point and a good one, actually. The Bears did that a ton. Totally. I noticed that quite a bit. So we cover the Bears game. We cover the Rams game. We're ready to go. Roll into 15 seconds of fantasy here. Gregg's not here, but you guys don't like to hear about our fantasy teams, which you don't really have to hear about this week. Neither Nick or I played this week. Nick had a bye in the playoffs. Gregg lost, so he doesn't. That's why he's really not here, is he just couldn't take the shame of losing. Nick, you got anything to say fantasy-wise?
I'm losing everybody. TJ Hawkinson, CJ Godwin, Harrison Butker, Tyreek Hill on COVID lists, but I'm still going to win. All
right, here we are. Nick's going for the championship. All right, thanks for watching us, guys. Thanks for listening in. I'm Matt Freese. You can find me at Fries Football. My co-host here, Nick Olson. Where are you?
I'm at Nick Olson NFL.
All right, at Nick Olson NFL. Our regular co-host, Gregg Blake, at You've Been Gregged. Kindred Skulls, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. You can also find the YouTube channel on YouTube. Just search for Kindred Skulls. It's in the Twitter bio. At Kindred Skulls is the Twitter as well. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching along. Everybody have a happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Merry Christmas. I know that's coming up in a couple days. See you next time.
Bye. I love you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
There we go. The I love you comes back from Nick. Here we are.
Do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind. And we'll